It's the Rangers Journal Night.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Rangers Journal podcast. This is our second pod of the day. Obviously, Bob, Cammy, Derek, and Billy brought you the Rangers news at midday, and now we've got Mr. RFC Youth Updates himself on to give us a wee youth update in pre-season. Well, Willie, how you doing, mate?
Hi, good mate. Just chilling out, enjoying a nice peaceful day in the house. It doesn't happen very often, so it's good to have it.
Aye, good stuff, good stuff. And Doug, fourth show of the week, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Hopefully not. Hopefully everyone's not getting sick of us.
Right, so welcome everybody in the comments. Before we go any further, smash that like button for me. Helps get us in the algorithm. Right, Doug, I'm going to come to you first. Obviously, we're in for the kind of... I want to get kind of the feel for... But what's the point in youth players going on pre-season, right? I want to kind of dive into it a wee bit tonight and see is this pre-season going to be any different. So what's your kind of opinion on it? Obviously, we've got Lisa Finlay Curtis away with the first team, Alex Lowry, Ross McCausland, you can count him as a first team player now. Zach Lovelace is there. There's a few players. So what do you think is the point in this?
Well, the point is that they're members of the squad and they're there to do a job, which is to learn from the players above them, and ultimately to put pressure on the players above them to make sure that they're still performing. It's obviously a part of the club's overall strategy as well. We want to, fans especially want young players coming through, because quite often the young players are the local guys, the ones that have been supporting the club since they were kids, and fans love players like that. I mean, there's a reason that people love Barry Ferguson, for example, as much as they do, and the fans' dream is to have a Barry Ferguson every year. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but we want to try and aim towards that kind of thing. I would love for us to be able to bring a youth player along every year, and so you have to include them in the best of them in the first team. As I say, that's where they'll learn, they'll get used to what it is to be in the first team, and hopefully then, as we have seen a little bit recently, make steps to actually play.
Fair point. Well, I'm going to come to you and kind of pose the same question, but see, over my lifetime, there's not really been any kind of... I don't know, it's difficult to say without being kind of too harsh about it. It's... For me, unless you have a youth player that really stands out, I don't see the necessary... I don't know. I don't know what the management gain out of this, because they barely keep any youth players in the squad when the season starts. Apart from, obviously, they've got to play them on the bench. Am I right or wrong on in that aspect?
Yeah, look, I think over the years that has been true. They've taken players away for pre-season, and then more than often they've just dropped back into the academy straight away. I can only imagine that these guys have done well, maybe towards the end of last season, or maybe the manager's had an eye on somebody like Zach Lovelace, who's obviously been injured, and he just wants to have a look at him during the pre-season. But it's one of those things, unless the manager actually speaks about it and actually tells us why, it's really difficult to know, because there's obviously other academy players there that might feel like they should be there and they've not been selected. So it's a fine balance. And I think sometimes it's down to numbers, because obviously there's some players that still weren't part of the pre-season when they obviously returned to Scotland, and now they're in the Netherlands. For me, somebody like Finlay Curtis deserves to be there. Finlay's been probably one of the best academy players in the last 2 years. He deserves the opportunity to go and be with the first team. Zach Lovelace, I think we've seen enough of Zach in little small kind of cameos to suggest that he's got something, and maybe this is a chance for him to go and show that. Paul and CEO, yeah, again, another one of those midfield players. Maybe the manager felt that potentially there would be one or two of those midfield players might have left. That's why he was taken. And obviously Haji's not there as well, clearly, so that opens up a space for him. I think at the time Bailey Rice wasn't fit enough to go. So I think, yeah, again, possibly Bailey might have been there ahead of one or two of them, but because of his injury status, he wasn't selected. And I think he's obviously back at the moment training with the B team, hopefully going to get some minutes in the coming weeks.
Well, I'm going to stay away. You see, on Finlay Curtis, he's a name that kind of cropped up, and I've read a wee bit about him in terms of he seems to be is a number 10 he is, if I'm right in thinking. Likes to arrive late in the box. It's a central kind of play. Tell us a wee bit about
Yeah, look, he's versatile. I think he's one of those guys. I think you could play him anywhere and he would do a job. One of those kids that he just keeps working hard and looking to develop his game. I mean, a couple of years ago, he wasn't even offered a professional contract at Rangers at 16. He was on an amateur contract, and he was basically told that he would have to prove himself to get a contract, and that's exactly what he did. And actually, over the last 2 years, he's been one of the most consistent players in the academy. He's one of those guys that can score goals. He gets himself into some really great positions. He's quite tenacious in the tackle for all he's quite small. He reads the game quite well. And he's one of those guys, see, even when you're getting beat, you know that Finlay will still be giving 100% out there, even in games where maybe the rest of the players maybe aren't maybe hitting the heights they should be. And he's just that kind of player. And he's obviously impressed the coaching staff for him to be selected and to be part of that squad, because I don't imagine they're just kind of randomly selecting players for no real reason and taking them with them. Because somebody like Finlay has done enough over the last 2 years to deserve an opportunity, just like Robbie Fraser, who just kept going and going until he eventually got his chance, and now he's sitting on a 2-year contract. So sometimes hard work and perseverance is maybe the best thing you can ever have as a footballer.
Aye, definitely. Just staying with you for one more point. One of the commenters, RFC, said, wonder why Archie Stevens and Thompson Ashaka wasn't taken since we need wingers. Did you think that's because at least Zach Lovelace and McCausland's there?
Yeah, I think that's a good possibility. Zach would be utilised more in the wide positions. Obviously, Ross McCausland, you still get Scott Wright, you've got Cortez. So there is, I mean, even Finlay Curtis can drop into those positions. You could play Robbie Fraser higher up the pitch as well if it came to it. Archie's probably slightly unlucky. I mean, he has been playing quite well in the games that I've seen him in pre-season. He's looked sharp. I think in terms of Thompson Ashaka, I mean, I really like Thompson. I think he's technically a very gifted player. I think his biggest issue is that he probably doesn't work hard enough for the team. I think if you're going to play him as a wide player, now and a big part of the game is getting back in and defending. That's not really something that Thompson's shown a great deal of in some of the games. I mean, he was actually taken off in an academy game towards the end of last season because he basically never tracked the opposition fullback who went on to score. The fullback ran about 70 yards and Thompson just decided he wasn't going to chase him. So about 2 minutes later, Davy McCallum took him off the pitch, and that was the end of his game after about 25 minutes.
Don't really hear it. A 25-minute subbing fit by NML, do you? But fair play.
Look, it was one of those things, mate. Like a couple of minutes before it, he should have tracked the runner and he didn't. And then he didn't do it again, and the guy ended up scoring from it. I think it might have been the Motherwell game, if my memory serves me right. But he basically just never tracked the runner. Like the fullback just ran, and Thompson decided he wasn't chasing him. So you just saw Davy kind of point towards somebody, and 2 minutes later, Thompson was off the pitch. So, and at the end of the day, like if you're going to play in that position now, I think that is a huge part of the game. You're expected to get back and work for the team. It's not just about you going forward. You need to go back the other way.
Aye. Doug, I'm going to come down to you, mate. See, there's more kind of senior youth players in the first team squad now in terms of Ross McCausland, Zach Lovelace, and Alex Lowry. Do you think that they're going to be used this season?
I hope so. I've said, I think on a couple of pods now, one of the things that annoyed me most about last season was how little King played after doing what I thought was reasonably well given the circumstances the year before. You know, he got thrown in at the deepest of possible ends for a young player, you know, Champions League matches without experienced, players beside him. And I thought the very least that he could get rewarded for that would be to continue his development, but he played barely anything. McCausland obviously came in slightly similar but less severe circumstances to cover because we just didn't have players. He also made a good go of it. He's arguably probably made a better go of it indeed. So I would like to think that he'll get his chance to continue to stake his place. There's no reason they shouldn't. It's not as if we're sitting here, particularly right now, with 101 nailed on options. So there's no reason he shouldn't get a chance. As for the other ones, I mean, they've only really had minutes here or there. Lowry went out on loan, didn't really sparkle, although he did get injured. I'm interested to see what will happen with Devine, because I think he did well when he went out on loan. So, he's got a bit of experience. He's got Premier League experience as well, playing for Motherwell. So, it'll be interesting to see if he gets minutes this year.
Well, who was it going to come to you? Leon King. Do you know what the kind of, is there any plan for him this season in terms of, is he going to get a loan move to get some first team football under his belt? You hear me, Willie?
Can't hear anything.
You're not hearing him? All right, Willie's away to restart, so he'll be back in a wee minute. Doug, I'll stay with you on Leon King. What's your thoughts for him for this upcoming season? Obviously, he played centre half the last couple of matches of the season, and he didn't set a header alight, I think it's fair to say. But do you think there's a plan? There needs to be a plan for him going forward. Does he get a future at a club?
Yeah, I mean, I think there absolutely has to be a plan. I mean, there should be development plans for every young player, laying out what the expectations of them are, how they expect them to develop, so that they have goals to achieve. It'd be unfair, in my opinion, to have it any other way, and I'm sure that that's what they do. I have heard under previous sort of youth regimes that that's what they do, and I assume that it would still be the same. I mean, I would think. I would like to see him go out on loan, I think, because it seems obvious from last season that he's not someone that they're going to rotate in. So there's no point in him sitting doing nothing for another year. It'll just stagnate his career, particularly after like the start he had. I mean, I guarantee if you put him out on loan, loads of clubs would be interested in him. It's a young guy with 6 Champions League matches against some of the best teams in the world. Now, fair enough, if you could turn around and go, well, he didn't exactly excel, but then it's not a young player's job to come in and excel. It's a young player's job to come in and gain experience, do the best he can, and hopefully not be awful. And while I know that there are fans out there who do think he was awful during that period, I don't think that that's down to simply him. Like I say, he was playing games against I think it was Liverpool, but don't quote me. But I mean, well, Liverpool, Napoli, or Ajax. It's not as if there's an easy one amongst them. Whichever one it was, he played at least one of those games, I think, too, with James Sands as his centre back partner. Now that's not good for either of those two players. So
right.
I don't think you can blame that on him. So I would love to see him go out on loan, like I said, to a Motherwell, to a Kilmarnock, to someone like that. Get first team opportunities, the ability to like you say, go out and potentially show he can set the header light, and then that'll give him a platform to potentially come back and actually challenge.
Well, can you hear me okay now, aye?
I mean, everything just went deadly quiet for some reason, so I come out and go back in.
Where do you stand on Leon King?
Yeah, look, it's one of those really difficult ones for me. It sort of feels like he's not going to be utilised as a centre back anymore. Like the manager, I don't think sees him as that. Is he a full back? I don't think so. Is he a 6? I don't think so. It feels like it's like a country for Leon. Does he stay and just accept that he's a squad player, or does he have to put him on play, then he might not have a future after that? I mean, I genuinely don't know what the right answer is, if I'm totally honest.
Aye. Well, your sound's breaking up again, mate. So, Doug, come to you on Zach Lovelace. He comes on at St Mirren, makes an impression. Has a decent first half, picks up a hamstring injury. Just Rangers luck, as I'm calling it now. I think it's fair to say that was Rangers' luck at the time. I would like to see him challenge Ross McCausland for the right wing berth this season. The comments will probably disagree with that, but I don't think there's any other way of getting these players in the team unless you just play them. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, not particularly precious over what positions players challenge for. Players should be challenging for any position they're capable of playing, and keep, as I said, earlier, they're there to make sure that who's ever in front of them is playing their best, and if not, to go in after them. Like you say, I mean, a lot of people are really keen to see more of him because he did come in and look bright at a time when we were looking for a bit of that. So again, this is another young player, and particularly for Lovelace, who came in with a lot of praise behind him, and I think a fair bit of expectation. But again, it hasn't really appeared. I think a lot of folk thought he was coming in to be in that kind of first team group and push. So yeah, it would be good to get the chance to see a bit of him, and as I say, as well as the other young players.
Willie, do you think that's your sound sorted now?
I hope so.
Aye, that's you now, mate. That's you now. Zach Lovelace, where are you on Lovelace this season? Obviously, this is this the last year he's dealing it.
It is, mate. Yeah, he's in the last year. Yeah, look, I think it's probably a big 3 to 6 months. I think he probably needs to push for this first team squad place, and when he gets his opportunity, he really needs to take it. I mean, Zach's got that great ability to run by players with pace. He's got good trickery. He can obviously cut inside and score goals. He can take players to the byline. I think we saw that small cameo against St Mirren, which I think people were really excited about. And yet again, it could be him that's sitting on a 3-4 year deal now instead of Ross McCausland. It was just on that day he broke down, didn't play again that season really. And Ross went on to make whatever that was, like 30 appearances. So football can be strange at times. That was probably really unfortunate last season, and I think that's why the manager wants to have a good look at him. And I would imagine if Zach does well, then Rangers will look to renew his contract and get him on an extended one.
Well, where do you sit on Alec Lowry? Just out of curiosity.
I've always been a big Alex Lowry fan. I mean, you'll probably not find many bigger fans than me in terms of his quality. Technically very gifted. Got that degree of arrogance, which I like in a 10. Alex can probably do anything he wants, to be honest. He is that kind of player. People I don't really know. There's a lot of things have been said on Twitter that I don't really get. People going on about his attitude. I don't know how many people have actually ever seen Alex play on a regular basis to comment on that. Or is it just because a couple of guys come onto Twitter and say that about a player? That's enough to take it that it's true. But look, Alex is an unbelievably gifted footballer. But yeah, again, a bit like Zach, it's probably a really big 3 to 6 months for Alex in terms of pushing on in his career and showing that he's a Rangers first team player.
What? Well, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, what is his attitude like? Is it a good attitude he's got?
I've never seen Alex show a bad attitude. Do you know what I mean? In all the years I've watched him, I've never seen that. Maybe people just see that kind of chilled out, kind of relaxed thing and think that he's lazy. But some of the best number 10s in the world are like that. Like, they don't really run, they don't really do much, but once you get them on the ball, they're the guys that make the difference between you winning a game and losing a game, and Alex has got that capability. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because everybody's going to have a different opinion on young players. For me, I think Alex is a really, really talented young player, but he just needs to be consistently used in that position. I don't think he's a wide player. I don't think he's a 7 or an 11 personally. I think he's a 10. I think you need to get him on the ball in the final third, and you need to let him hurt the opposition.
Aye, definitely. I think what you're talking about is a training video. It was on Rangers Review or Rangers TV, and it was there was a period of play in training against Standard Liège, and Clement's telling him he should be getting the appetite to get in the box, and Lowry's just kind of on the park and doesn't react. But you're in the middle of a match, you can't expect the boy to turn around and go, "Aye, all right, Gaff, I'm no bother." Do you know what I mean?
I think the thing with Alex is, right, I mean, I've not seen all the videos, I've not seen all this. I'm just going through what I've watched Alex for a number of years in the academy, but Alex can do things that probably not many other players at the club can do. And we're always screaming out for technically gifted young Scottish players and players that can be that extra spark. See, Alex, he's got that. He's got that. What we say, that 1% that makes him better than a lot of other players.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what every club's looking for. They're looking for these guys that have got that extra little bit, And it's probably trying to get the best out of Alex in a position. And obviously he's had some problems the last year or so. Obviously losing, a family member wasn't easy for him, and that obviously would have been difficult for him trying to play football. But yeah, look, there is quality within the club, and there is some really gifted young Scottish players here. But I think, as we've seen in the last 6 months, it can be really difficult at Rangers because you see sometimes the stuff that's been said on social media about young players, and people wonder why it's difficult for these guys to make that step up and progress.
I know. It's a disgrace, to be honest with you. It's a complete and utter disgrace. I think it's just a case of Guinea boy first team experience. Let him come in and see.
Yeah.
He'd an indifferent loan spell at Hearts. There was times where I think it was away to Kilmarnock in the League Cup. He turned up and he scored. It was away at Rugby Park and he played really, really well. And I thought, right, this might be him getting used to the level, kicking on. It's funny because I had Kevin Thompson on the pod a while ago, and me and him were talking after a Connor Barn breakdown, and Kev says to me that why did the Rangers not send Alex Lowry to Falkirk? So he says it's all about the narrative. He said, so if you send him to Falkirk and he's played 40 games and he's scored 10, 15 goals, all his support's got a different opinion on him coming back. They want him to get a chance. He says, whereas he's had a bit of an injury at Hearts, they can't. They sent him back in January. It's and then the whole support within Rangers assumes that's because of his attitude. There's no way addressing it up. That was the narrative that was pushed on him. You know what I mean? And it wasn't true.
But the problem you've got in Scottish football, I mean, I think the young boy Barham was at Kelty Hearts. He went and loan to Kelty Hearts. So he's literally dropped into the second division in Scotland just to play, just to get that experience. And then he's come back to Aberdeen and he's played a number of games for them, and now he's obviously joined Rangers. But then you can look at other players, obviously, somebody like Charlie Adam, he went out on loan and did well, and then come back and played for Rangers. Alan McGregor had a couple of loan spells, come back and played for Rangers. Whereas guys like sort of Alan Hotham and Nathan Patterson, they didn't need that. They just went into the first team and stayed there. And it's trying to find the balance. The argument now at a lot of big clubs is when you send players out on loan, they're sort of out of sight, out of mind. So people don't talk about them anymore. So there's this fear of leaving Rangers and Celtic and going out on loan because they think they might not come back. But I don't know how else we resolve that problem because, some people were critical of the B team in the Lowland League, but where else do we go? Because you're not going to get into League 2 or League 1 in Scotland. So what do we do? Do we just keep sending players out on loan? Do we have this bridge, which is currently the B team? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that is the God's honest truth. I don't know what the right answer is, but it needs to be resolved at some point.
I don't think the B team's a bridge at all because they didn't even have a schedule, a decent schedule last season. You know what I mean? There's a problem right away. Doug, I'm going to come to you and give you a 4 because I think you've prepared a wee bit of work, mate.
I was just in preparation. I was thinking to myself, I wanted to see whereabout kind of some of the players are, particularly the ones that are kind of closer. The ones I tend to focus on are the ones that tend to be in the first team. Just before I do, one of the points I wanted to touch on that William was talking about there. I mean, I personally think loans should be a really key part of a player's development, unless they do show signs that they're really capable without it. I think that, a loan is a really key part of a youth player's development because it gets that competitive football in. And it's especially important right now when we don't have any decent level of youth football other than the sort of European youth league that they play in, which they also get decent competition there. But that's not, regular. So, I think that the club should be sitting down with players and going, look, we want to develop you, and then when you get to this kind of level, we're going to try and put you on loan to get you experience so that you then come back and then make that next step. To me, that's ideal. And like William said, there's great players that have done that. McGregor was a example I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when talking about Ross McCrory and the differences I felt that there were between them, because McGregor went out on some loans and he really shined on his loans. He was getting Player of the Month awards from his club and things like that. He was actually shining, whereas McCrory's loans had been fairly not ineffectual or anything. He'd been fine, but it wasn't like he didn't go out and people and became a big part of the team the way that McGregor did. And that was kind of one of the differences I saw between them. But so what I got was basically just looking through where are the players in terms of what have they done. So I've got kind of two groups. I'd looked up Wright as well, but he's obviously gone on loan. But you've got kind of the four at the top who've had significant first team play either at Rangers. These numbers include football they've played away from Rangers as well. So players like Devine, obviously at Motherwell, Lowry at Hearts, and a couple of the other ones have played to, I think McKinnon's played at a couple of different teams as well. But I mean, when you look at it, quite a few of them have had a good level of experience. When you look at the top four, obviously in particular, a good crop of SPL games in there. The European column, that includes all three levels: Champions League, Europa League, and Conference. So, for example, Alex Lowry has played three of those games are Conference League games that he played when he was with Hearts. So, they've got a little bit of a sprinkle of European experience in there. There's a lot of SPL games. Every single one is played in the SPL at least once. They've played in Cups games there, and then when you get obviously to the lower levels, there's a bit more of a variation within that. But I mean, they've played in the Lowland League, which although it's not top level, they'll had a lot of tough games in there. Some of them have played a good amount there. And there was actually a bit more. Some of them, like, I didn't realise McKinnon had played so many games across like the Championship and the what's it called, the Challenge Cup. If you played in, so they've got a good crop of experience there. And having now looked at this, it kind of annoys me even more that some of them just are sitting there and doing absolutely nothing, when they could be either getting more minutes with us, and that doesn't mean to be huge amounts of minutes, but like I've said it before, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. You cannot tell me that any one of these players couldn't go and have a perfectly decent game against the bottom quarter of this league. They'd go in, and again, I'm not necessarily expecting that they're going to set the header alight, but they can certainly go in and have a decent game. And to my mind, every example I can think of in recent times where they have gone in and played, they've done well. I mean, there's the kind of game the previous season against Hearts that we had before we played them in the cup final, which a whole bunch of the young players went in, and they were absolutely great. Now, admittedly, I don't think Hearts were really in it. I think they were mostly saving themselves for the final, but nonetheless, they went in and played perfectly well. Fraser played a little bit at the end of last season and was, people were all raving about him. And obviously, the top four have all played well at various points. So I just feel it's so disappointing. The comments talked a little bit about, should these players be taking up the places of people like Lowry, Dowell or Lawrence or players of that level. And some of them, I think, yeah, they should. I mean, that would save us money. I don't see any way that like a Lowry, for example, couldn't have taken up all the minutes that pretty much Scott Wright has played in the last two seasons. I doubt he would have done much any worse than what he has now. He's got a lot more experience overall, and there's games you wouldn't have put him in, like you probably wouldn't be putting him into maybe the game against Leipzig or something like that. But there's plenty of games that he's played in the league that someone like a Lowry could easily take up, and that's the kind of things that I would like to see more of. A bit more faith in these players, and show them, because that would show them that there is a pathway. And then if they are going out on loan and coming back and getting games, it would start to show them that getting into the first team isn't just about getting into the first team and then sitting doing nothing. It will be about getting to play. Because ultimately, the thing that it doesn't matter so much to us as fans, but it's important to them and to the club to a degree, is obviously to be a young player and to play for Rangers, and for that to become your regular. That's the one in the many. The vast majority, 95%, 99% of youth players will end up having their careers away from Rangers, and there is a duty from the club to prepare them for their careers. So it's not just about getting them into the first team. For us, that's the ideal goal, but it's also about preparing them to be able to go off and play for maybe the Motherwells, the Hearts, or whoever it might be of the world, or whatever level they end up going to. And I don't really feel that they're doing the best that they could for that as well, because the bonus of that for us is that even if they go, if we get players to decent levels, we'll bring in money for them as well. But it's not all about the Bassies and the 20, 30, 40 million sales. It's also about the 10, £100,000 sales that maybe you can make by selling smaller, younger players as well. I mean, just look at Chelsea. They are the absolute masters of that. They've got 8 million young players, and they sell. Obviously, this is at the high level, but they make a fortune from selling youth players. And we could. I wouldn't want to see us doing it quite to the same degree that they do, because they're a bit of a farm. But to the same degree, we could make a little bit of money that helps the overall budget by developing youth players, and then eventually selling the ones that aren't good enough for us but good enough for others, selling them on.
Willie, you want to come in on any of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I wouldn't have known a lot of those numbers. I mean, the Lowland League seasons, obviously, I know like sort of Ross and Robbie played a lot in the Lowland League. But certainly some of the other figures are interesting, even like the UEFA Youth League. I mean, that's a good level, the UEFA Youth League. You're playing against some of the best up-and-coming young players in the world, so it's an unbelievable experience for these guys. That's why Rangers either winning the under-18s league or the Rangers first team making the Champions League allows our young players to go and play at that level and to be tested against players that they wouldn't get to play against in Scotland. Like, without repeating myself, and it is a big issue in Scotland, but there's literally very little between the under-18s and the first team. That's the biggest issue in Scottish football, and until that gets resolved, we're going to have a problem. For every like sort of Lennon Muller and David Watson, there's like 100 players out there that are probably really good players, but they're maybe not good enough yet to go and play in a first team somewhere. But maybe if they had that extra year after under-18s, that might just be enough to move them up. But at the moment, we just don't have that in Scotland, and it is a huge failing for the whole of Scottish football, to be honest.
Aye, definitely. I think once you see it kind of on paper like that, and you look at what games they've actually played, I mean, Doug, that's a cracking slide you've prepared, mate. Like,
it is, mate. You know what? Like, and it shows people that these kids aren't, what would you say, like sort of totally inexperienced. So, like, obviously, they do have enough experience, even if it is at a lower level. They've got the knowledge to come in and play, but it's been given that opportunity, and it's a brilliant slide, and hopefully that shows the people that's watching that these kids, like, they're coming into the first team, but they do still have enough about them to make that step up if they're given a chance.
I think, see, like, when I'm looking at, like, see, like Aaron Lyle, right, I would say him coming through the Rangers Youth Academy has been a success for the boy, because he's at my local team now, and I know Morton are a good club. And I know Dougie Emery's going to give him first team chances. He went to Airdrie last season. I think he was came off the bench for quite a bit yet. But Dougie Emery will train that boy and play him. And it's like Doug says, it's not just about bringing them into first team. It's about making sure they've got a career as well and nursing them and looking after them a bit, innit? I mean, is there not a kind of a bit of a culture at a club that they've told the club, right, only certain people will make it into the first team, but we will at least get you playing lower division football in Scotland? I mean, is that not the least that we could do? Anybody? Doug,
I think you're talking to Doug, sorry. No, look, I think for me, like, so when it comes to Aaron, I think it's a good move. He's in the Scottish Championship. He's still very young. As you said, he's probably going to play 25, 30 games this season. He's only signed a 1-year contract. So if Aaron does really well at Morton, he might well be in the top flight next year. Because you only need to look at Josh McPake. He's went from Stirling Albion to the Premier League.
Right.
So there's nothing to stop Aaron Lyle, being a Premier League footballer next year. And Aaron is more than capable, mate. He's a very gifted footballer. And I know certainly when Aaron was in the B team, he certainly caught the eye of a number of managers, especially in those, whatever it is, the SPFL Trust Trophy, the old Challenge Cup. But yeah, like, Alan's a really gifted footballer, and Morton's got a hell of a player there.
Oh, definitely, 100%. I've got pals that are Morton supporters, and I've texted them saying, like, you've got a kind of a decent youngster. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And apparently he's got really good application and training and stuff like that as well, for what I've read about him.
See, Aaron's just unlucky, isn't he? And he's in a position that we've got a number of players in. So it was probably the right decision for Aaron, like, to move on. And I'm glad that there was other clubs that were looking at him. So it shows you that he had options, and he, in the end, has obviously chosen to go to Morton, which, if he's going to play most weeks, then it's 100% the right decision to make.
Well, can you maybe see Wee Fraser going out on loan this season? Or do you think it's a wee bit up in the air just now?
Do you know what? It's really hard to know, because obviously anything can happen in this transfer window.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still think that we'll need to sell players, and Red Fan could be one of those players that Rangers receive a bid for, and we might just not be able to turn it down. So does that mean it's going to be, Jefty that's first choice and then Robbie's second choice? Maybe we're going to utilise Robbie in a different position this year, or maybe we're going to move like Jefty higher up the pitch. I mean, who knows? See, until we actually see them playing in a game, maybe that's when we'll get a slight idea as to how we're going to set up and what formation we're going to use. And because so far everything's been behind closed door, isn't it? We've not really had a chance to see anything, so we're sort of guessing. But yeah, I think for Robbie, if he's maybe not going to get the minutes in the first team this year, then a loan is something the club could look at. But I'm just delighted that Robbie got his chance last year, because he's such a great kid, and he's worked his backside off to get that opportunity. So it's an unbelievable thing for him and his family.
Aye, definitely, mate. I remember you the last time you were on. You were speaking quite passionately about him getting his chance and how big it was for him and his family, and that's a good accomplishment for a boy that he's managed to fulfil his dream.
Yeah, look, and that's the word there, isn't it? I mean, see, all three of us that's on this podcast, what would their dream have been? To play professional football, and he's doing it for Rangers. So, yeah, it's incredible for him. He's worked, and he's went from being a central midfield player to a left back, and he's had to be retrained, and it's crazy, to actually get an opportunity to play for Rangers first team was his dream, and now he's done it. So no matter what happens from here on in, he's done something none of us were able to ever do.
Exactly. Doug, I'm going to come to you now and put you on the spot. From this list, who is going to be a squad player next season? Who goes out on loan, etc.? Who's going to make it in the first team next season for you?
Well, I mean, the top five are definitely all. Well, I mean, all of them are squad players. They're all in the squad and they're to be chosen, apart from Wright. So, they're all thereabouts. I mean, McCausland will definitely play, and I think I think he's the only one that's like nailed on. We'll definitely see maybe 5-10 more appearances from him. And I mean, his fortunes will partly depend as well on obviously how the transfer window ends. If we don't have any more players in those kind of wing positions, then he'll probably play 30 odd games. If we sign, a top right winger, then maybe less. Let's say King, Devine, Lowry, Fraser. I would like to see them all, but my gut says that they'll do what normally happens and they'll just be there in the squad, and they won't really feature that much unless there's injuries. I mean, they'll be there in the European squads because we need to fill quotas for that. The second group, apart from Fraser, because I'd say Fraser's in the sort of the top 5. The ones below that are the ones I think that are sort of spinning a little bit. I mean, Rice and McKinnon have both had fleeting appearances, but again, not really. I don't really expect to see them. Ufiko, I would only expect to see him if there's significant injuries to the defence. Obviously, we're bringing someone like Nsiala, who's a young player who's obviously going to be challenging for a position. Loveless, maybe, he's played a couple of games, but there's going to be striker and those attacking winging ones are quite difficult to get into because they're high pressure positions. So I need to see. And Lyle, I think he's probably the furthest away because he's not really featured at all. So he's probably more just this there. But I think, as I say, the top 5. Lowry, I think this is probably a bit of a defining career season for him. He came in, he had his bright spark, he kind of fell off again. He's been out on loan. So this season, I think if he doesn't make any impact this season, I don't think he will make at all. And he's probably best leaving. So it could be a defining one for him.
Cole McKinnon got a couple of chances last season. Thought he spoke well away to Hibs in a cup. He come on, scored that was disallowed. He's been used in various positions. Is that somebody you could maybe see? Would you like to see him just filling a squad place in the midfield area, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I would like to see all of these guys get time. I think the only one that I wouldn't, if it was me, the only one that I would probably not have in my thinking for some kind of time is Lyle, just because I think he's maybe about a step away. But every other one I would like to see play to some degree, because I think we've got the scope to do so against some of the smaller teams. McKinnon, like you say, he's had minutes. He's played decently well. So again, if there's, depending on how the transfer window goes, if we're sitting here come the end of the transfer window and our midfield has still got the likes of like Dowell and Lawrence and players like that in it, I think the manager should be considering him as equal as a opportunity to come in to the team, because I consider all of those players I've just mentioned to be players that aren't first team players for one reason or another. Lawrence due to injury, in fact, Lawrence and Dowell due to injury have not been first team players either. So to me, I think the manager should be sitting there going, okay, well, yes, I do have these players that are obviously more experienced and X, Y, Z, but I've also got this young lad who is probably hungrier, loves the club, wants to play, and I don't see why I shouldn't give him a chance. If he gives him a chance and he doesn't do well, then fine. You can go back to the default, but the default hasn't been working. So try new things.
I know. I don't think Willie's managing back on, just for all the viewers. So my apologies about that. I think he's got some technical difficulties. Doug, where do you see us going forward in the kind of the next decade? What do we need to do? I've been a big fan of bringing the reserve league back. I've been a big fan of. I would like to see my B team coming up against. I seen Kilmarnock going up last season. and a reserve game, and the likes of Kevin Van Veen, Greg Stewart, Stuart Finlay was coming back for an injury. All these type of players that needed competitive minutes in their legs coming back. I want to see my players lining up against players like that. I think it's better than any B league or any lowland league that you can get. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, if we sort of take a step away from Rangers for a moment and just think about Scottish youth development as a whole, the number one thing that has to be done is we need to get a second league back in place. I think this, they should be going out and to every team and saying, right, who can put a team forward, and get all the teams together, and then maybe if they need to, maybe fill the space up with some smaller team, just actual teams that can handle some extra games and just play them, do whatever. But the number one thing, I think, we need to get some kind of league format, even if it doesn't include all of the teams. If you get 6 teams together, that's better than nothing. You can supplement that with other things if you have to, but I would really try to get some sponsorship in place to help so that all the main clubs can afford to do it and get a proper league sorted out for these young players. It's beneficial for the clubs as well, because like you say, the rules as they were previously allowed you to play some of your first team players, certain players. I think it was 23 was the cut off, and you were allowed to have I think 3 or 4 players that were over that age to play, and that benefits the clubs as well, because you can play players who maybe need some match time before coming back into the first team, and so that's when you can get, like you say, your first team level players in matches as well. It can keep players fit. It can help them coming back from injury to go into matches that are going to be a bit less intense, less physical for them, because they'll be playing against players that are younger than them on the whole. So there's benefits all round. And in terms of Scottish football, we're not going to bring through better players if these players aren't getting competitive football. That's why I'm so passionate about the idea of getting them out on loan so they can do that. But that, to me, is the number one thing that should be getting done. Get them into a proper league system so that they're playing competitive football every week in, week out. And then, of course, you can start with things like your vertical integration. Then, have that team play the same way that the first team plays, so that they're all familiar with the tactics. And then the other thing that coming back to on a club level, we need to employ managers that are keen to play young players, that are open to playing young players. Clement seems to be a manager that is of that thought. He's played young players in previous teams. He's used youth obviously already with Rangers. So you need to have you need to have managers that are open to that. And I think that given our position in kind of the world of football, and therefore the level of managers that we're kind of aiming at, I think that that should be something that's relatively easy for us to do, because in general, the skew of managers we're going to get are going to be generally younger, because we're maybe not necessarily getting the top experience level managers. We can, aim for. I think we should be aiming for young managers that are looking really good on the continent. We had a couple that have been linked with us. Van Bronckhorst is a really good example of that. He's a young manager that had got into a really competitive league, done well, got success in the Netherlands, and then obviously came to us and, in one way excelled completely in terms of Europe. So, that's the kind of manager that I think is a good level for us to be bringing in, and those are going to be open to playing young players, I think, as well. Clement is probably just a little bit ahead of that in terms of experience-wise, but still within that kind of bracket. Youngish manager who has done good things on the continent, could potentially develop further. Because at the end of the day, managers are similar. For us, managers are going to be similar to players. If they come in and do really well, and particularly if they do well in Europe, the big clubs will start to circle. Or if not the biggest clubs, the ones below them. So your Aston Villas will start looking at them. Gerrard was linked with Newcastle just before that as well. So, the reality is any manager who's good enough will get poached from us eventually. So we need to be agile and allow for that. And that's I think fits in also with the getting younger developing managers, because we can continue that as a kind of a thing. So I think getting the right managers that are open to youth play is also important.
I definitely. I think it's a topic we could genuinely sit here at about 10 o'clock and we still wouldn't find the right answer for it, to be honest with you, Doug. Just going to wrap up there.
There's just so many variables, Scotty. There's so many variables.
That's it. So, it's all about the variables these days, isn't it, Doug? It's all about the variables these days. Well, Doug, thank you for coming on.
Quite all right.
Have you got any other thoughts and stuff you want to?
No, not really. I think I've kind of said most of my piece. I'm guilty sometimes of not paying as much attention of the youth as I think I would like to. But like I say, my closing thought really is just I want to see more young players playing for Rangers. I want to see them get more opportunities for minutes in the first team. That's really the big thing for me. I feel like pretty much every player I've seen in the last couple of years have all been good enough to play against, as I say, the bottom half of the league. And we should be good enough as a team to give one player in a group of 11 the opportunity to play who's maybe not the best of the best in his position, to let him develop. If we're not good enough to do that, we're failing as a club, because it means that the team as a whole isn't good enough. So, I consider that to be part of a winning team and an effective team. So, yeah, that's kind of my overall thought.
Yeah, well, I've got a question. No, RFC, sorry, mate, I don't know anything about McCallum getting promoted to head of youth. I've heard the rumours, just like yourself, but I can't confirm nor deny that, I'm afraid, mate. I've not really heard anything about that. Obviously, Mia McInally was called up to the Scotland national team. Congratulations to her. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It was a good pod. I always like getting a wee bit of youth breakdown on a pod and bringing something different. We will be back on Monday night. I think that's when the guys' shows are starting up. Ross is going to have a show on a Monday called Rangers Vaults. Billy's going to be taking a show on a Wednesday. And Doug is going to be having a show on a Friday. So there will be plenty of different content coming out. Different people with different ideas, making the Rangers Journal different, which is what we're always striving for. So like and subscribe, tune in. We're here Monday to Friday with free content. And just remember, every night is Rangers Journal night.